Confused about how to plan for your retirement? Shawn Maloney is here to help. Shawn has created the Retire Happy framework that considers more than just how much you should save. Getting information and tools to preserve your financial future is minutes away. Welcome to the Priority of Retirement with your host, Shawn Maloney.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Priority Retirement, where we dive into all aspects of retirement planning for that happy retirement. In this episode, we have Lawrence Sprung, the founder and wealth advisor at Mitlin Financial, and established in 2004 with over 26 years of experience. He leads his firm in planning and assets management services, focusing on helping families make informed decisions. He's the author of Amazon bestseller, Financial Planning Made Personal: How to Create Joy in the Mindset for Success. So, Lawrence, I really appreciate you coming on today. It sounds like we have a ton in common. We talk about joy and retirement, and we call it, retire happy. You have a book about joy and how that factors into financial planning and all that. So I'm looking forward to diving in with you in that. Obviously, we'll get into that here in just a minute. But before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners, a little background about you and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, Shawn, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And yes, it seems like we definitely have a lot in common. So I appreciate you giving me this platform to share with your listeners. So as Shawn said, I'm Larry Sprung, founder and lead wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. And I am, first and foremost, a husband to Denise, a father to Zach and Jeremy. And I just so happen to be in the wealth management profession. So, how I got here is really a long, convoluted path, but I will kind of give you the 10,000 and quick overview. Essentially, growing up at a very young age, at the age of 13, I found out my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she was in her 30s at the time. And I watched her battle the disease. I watched my father have to manage everything that he had to manage with regard to a household, in addition to having a sick spouse, my mom. And, ultimately, that left an indelible mark on me because my dad did not have a financial advisor. He did not have somebody to lean on to help him walk through this stage of his life. And, not that it would have mitigated anything that was wrong with my mom or her health condition, but I kind of felt in my heart of hearts that if he had somebody helping him, guiding him, that it would have alleviated some of the burden that he had. So as I was exploring and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I delved into financial services and had a couple internships, and it was something I fell in love with. And the fact that I could help people like my dad and, just equally important, help other families who might be looking to achieve happy goals, whether it be retirement, like you talk about a lot, or buying a second home or vacationing, whatever that may be. I felt like I could help those people like my dad and other people reach those other milestones that would bring a lot of joy to their life. And quite frankly, it's been that way ever since I entered the profession and have not looked back. And it's been a wonderful experience working with so many great families and serving them in the way we do.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that. And, there's a lot of people obviously in our industry, but I love talking to folks and hearing those stories about the why, you get into things and do things and the personal side of things, right? I truly believe and see, people like yourself and myself being a service to people, great. Yeah, it's a great living, but at the same time, being able to help people and serve people, I love that mindset and the way you put that. So glad you shared that with me. Appreciate that. So it kind of sounded like it, that a little bit of background of what that had you, established and founded Mitlin Financial. But how has your vision kind of evolved with your practice since when you began to now?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where we were, much earlier on, right? It was just me and basically creating a capacity for the families I could potentially serve. And as time went on and as we've, gone through the years, it's become more important to, have an impact on a greater number of families. So we're now a team of 6 and growing. And what that's allowing us to do, or our team to do, is really serve a greater number of families. And we have a goal of 10xing that impact over the next 4 to 5 years, because we feel like we've created the systems and processes from a business standpoint that is going to allow us to impact exponentially more families and bring even more joy to the practice and the families we serve, because of the great team that we've assembled here at Mitlin Financial.
I love to hear that. Love to hear that. Like I said, it sounds like we have very similar stories. I love to hear those parallels. That's so great. Well, I know you wrote a book, and I love the fact that you talk about mindset and kind of that, the mindset side of finances and planning and all that. Tell us a little bit about some of the key principles without giving away the secrets in your book. But, what are some key principles, in the book that you feel individuals would, benefit from as far as developing that successful mindset when it comes to
Yeah.
financial matters?
So I think first and foremost, you hit on the first one, right? When you mentioned about me talking about my why for creating the practice. Very similarly, if you start thinking about a family that has goals and objectives in terms of what they're looking to accomplish, it's really vitally important for them to discover what their why is, right? And why are they doing this? What is the goal? Why do they, if they believe and want to retire, why do they want to retire? Why do they want to retire when they want to retire? How is this money that they're accumulating going to bring them joy and create that why? So, that why is super important in so many things in life. And I think that many times, in our financial profession, people are so focused on the numbers, and the numbers are important. We need to know how to do that. But I would argue that that why is equally, if not more important. So that is paramount to the discussion. Secondly, if you want to create this life of joy and you want to create a life of abundance and have the financial means to do that and bring that joy to your life, you have to start early. And starting early could mean different things to different people, right? If you're a listener listening to this in your teens or your early 20s, starting early means today. And if you're on the later side in your 40s or 50s, maybe you hadn't been educated on this, and starting early may be, turning off this podcast after it's done and starting today. But the point is, start as early as you possibly can. I mean, there's empirical evidence that using the power of compounding, starting in your 20s and investing over a 20-year period, not even large amounts, can put you, light years ahead of waiting till you're 40. But if you don't have anything started, get started today. And I think the last piece that I would add that I think is a really key component of the book is having a plan. You need to have a plan for that why, so you can execute on it. You need to have a plan for starting early. And so many times we spend more time over the course of the year planning our family vacation to make sure that that money is money well spent. We're maximizing the time. We're getting there, in the most efficient way. But a lot of times we don't take that same planning technique with regard to our financial life or
Yeah.
how we're going to create joy. And that is, again, another vitally important. So if you take nothing else from the book other than I need to figure out what my why is, create a plan, and start early, those three will really set you up for success in my opinion.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well said. I couldn't agree more. I like to tell people, look, retirement just isn't a spreadsheet. It's I love the retirement why piece, or really the why any goal that you set. But money's a tool. It's not what ultimately brings the happiness. It's a tool. What do you want to use that tool for? What was that tool gonna do for you, right? I mean, everybody's goals and aspirations are a little bit different, and then you build your plan around what that why is. Like you said, I mean, there's different avenues to go about, and look, we all work hard our whole lives, right? We're there to want to enjoy our retirement and enjoy that why. I love that. Love that.
Yeah, and I think to some people, I think retirement, we don't spend enough time thinking about what does retirement really mean. In our minds, it's I'm going to stop working and live off the assets I've created. And there's
Yeah.
not a lot of time put into, well, what am I going to do with this extra 40 hours a week
Right.
plus that I have?
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time with the families we serve on devising and developing not only a financial plan, but a life plan in terms of
Sure.
how are you going to be prepared for those extra hours? And maybe it means phasing in retirement, maybe it means having a part-time job, or maybe that means volunteering for you. So
Yeah.
everybody's different.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, because it not only is, I mean, retirement's a big mindset change in a lot of ways, right? Financially, there's a mindset change because now you're spending money versus accumulating. A lot of people get in their headspace about spending money, especially when you don't see money coming in. But then to your point, I mean, yeah, the time and like, you know,
Mm.
wow, you have all this time. You worked your whole life, so what are you going to do with your time? And it's a big change, and a lot of people don't really. I think what we see a lot is people don't really think about that until they get right on the precipice of it, or after they get into it. And they're like,
Agree.
wow, there's really quite a bit of few things to think about. But let's make that landing smooth, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I think we're both similar as well as we love educating people about, planning, about retirement, about all that. So tell us a little bit about, I know you have a podcast as well and your concepts and principles on how you get to go out and educate and inspire people in and around this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I love this platform. I love the podcasting platform. I think it's amazing. And really our goal is to create a show that helps our listeners find more joy, success, and really purpose through inspiring stories and actionable insights from fascinating guests. So they can really take those takeaways away and help them create a life that truly brings them joy. And at the end of the day, those guests can range various topics as you could possibly imagine, but that's really the impetus of the show and what we want to bring to those listeners that listen each and every week to our show.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's a great venue, easy to digest and so many different topics you can talk about.
Great. Yes.
And there's some,
Good.
the thing of it is that there's so much information out there, right? Where the age that we live in, and people can, Google whatever, and they can find whoever on a YouTube channel or whatnot. But I always tell people as well, look, yes, we have a ton of information at our fingertips, but you also want to validate that a little bit as well, right? And make sure that, the advice that you're getting and you're hearing from are credible and good sources of information. So I'm with you in regards to love educating people, if nothing else, that they have the right information so they can make the right decisions, right? Instead of these, let's just call them, these get rich quick schemes and those kind of things. A lot of times if it's too good to be true, sounds too good to be true, oftentimes it is. But I think when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, having that right plan and having somebody walk along that journey, in doing that is critical, is for sure. Well,
Yeah.
here's a loaded question, right? This is kind of it's a softball and a hardball all at the same time, right? So there's a lot of different steps involved in planning for people's retirement. But what comes to mind when I ask you the question of what are the key steps for people to financially secure that peace of mind, that stress-free retirement? What are some of the first things that pop in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the concepts we've already talked about, right? I think number one is creating that why and figuring out what that goal is and what your why is behind even like creating this step. Why do you want to retire? Is that something you're going to be comfortable with, right? Are you prepared for that extra time? So, figuring out that why, creating a plan for that success, because again, if you were trying to, take your family cross country without Waze or Google Maps or, Apple iPhone,
Yeah.
whatever tool you use these days to
Yeah.
drive around, any path will get you there without, a known map on how to get there. So having that plan in place that really incorporates that why of what you're looking for. And when we talk about the plan, I talk about the plan as a three-legged stool, if you will. You have to talk about your financial health, of course, but you also have to talk about your physical health, and you also have to talk about your mental health. So all those come into play, meaning, okay, so you're healthy now, planning for retirement, but what happens if you're planning all these things for retirement and you don't make it there, or your health doesn't allow you to do that, right? We're not all afforded that same opportunity. Like looking at my mom, she was diagnosed with cancer in her 30s, passed away at 47. If her and my dad just simply, evaded and didn't enjoy life at all and put everything towards retirement, that would be very boring life, and she didn't have the opportunity to make it there. So I think there
Right.
has to be balance in that plan,
Yep.
and you have to prepare yourself both physically for the long haul as well as mentally. And I think one of the biggest challenges from a mental standpoint, which we've talked about, is that preparation for retirement. Because we've seen so many folks, and you hear it these days, in terms of studies where, people are working longer than they ever have
Yeah.
before. And the implication there is that people are working longer because they need the money. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there that certainly are working longer and later in life because they need the money.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, there are people working longer and later in life simply because they don't know what to do with
Yeah.
themselves with the free time.
Yeah.
So, just like you're preparing financially, you also have to prepare yourself physically and mentally as well for that retirement. And then I would say the third step is just to check in and keep evaluating if you're on track, off track, and make adjustments as needed. Because I think that's where, sometimes people fail as well. They create the plan finally, but then it just sits on a shelf or in a drawer, and they don't look at it or see how they're making or not making progress. So I think those three steps are really vital to, working towards retirement and being more successful than not.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned maps. I think we're both old enough to remember when GPSs, weren't around, and you had to pull out the old school paper map, right, and jot that down. And well, it was a lot harder then to do those kind of things. But your financial and retirement plan are the same ways. It's nowadays it's a little more automated to go from point A to point B in a car, right? But you have to your point, you have that GPS that guides you along, and then also helps you with the detours that come around when you have that construction zone or you have that
Yeah.
pothole. Same thing happens in retirement. Life happens. You got to evaluate and adjust as you go. And the good news is when you have that plan in place, you can make adjustments to it, but at least you have the foundation there to help you put the guardrails in place, and go along that journey for sure.
Yeah, if you have no plan, you'll get wherever you're expecting to go because there's no
Right.
plan. So you'll
Right.
you'll end up there no matter what.
Yeah, who knows where you end up? You might have meant to go to California, and you ended up in Cuba. So,
There you go.
well, you hear a lot in the industry, obviously, about diversifying and those kind of things, and I really think diversification applies to both, the physical and mental as well as uh, the money side of things, right? You're going to diversify portfolios, you're going to diversify, your money and the type of funds that are used to help you along and fund that retirement. But you touched on the mindset and the physical and mental side of that as well, and staying active and doing what brings you happiness and joy. I think is key. Into the overall happiness. And if you're going to work because you want to, or go back to do something that you always wanted to do, but you didn't do because you were working the other job. Hopefully you get into that boat. But when we talk about diversification, we kind of tag more into the financial side of it. Um, what comes to mind when we talk about diversifying and strategies beyond just traditional stocks and bonds when it comes to retirement? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways to diversify a portfolio. And of course, I think a lot of it has to do with, the family themselves, their goals and objectives with the money that they're entrusting you with. Two is how much money is there for them to invest and have under your guidance. But, we've used, for example, alternatives, in our family's portfolios very strategically in terms of, having something that diversifies away from both stocks and bonds. So in a year like 2022, if you recall, where stocks and bonds both underperformed or
Yeah.
basically were down negative for the year, alternatives had, a different result
Yeah.
because they're not correlated to those items. So we do have small allocations that we've used for families to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, not a large amount, but depending on, families really, as you probably know, they really run the gamut. Some
Yeah.
believe that cryptocurrency is going to replace regular money. Then you have people thinking that on the other side of the coin that it's going to go away completely, and it's like the tulips back in Holland.
Right.
We're somewhere in the middle. We think that there's a use for it. That it can be used as a tool, not a overwhelming piece of the portfolio, but there is room for it. So, again, you have to look at each family's
Yeah.
situation, what their facts and circumstances look like. But that's also a challenge for some families that may not have a lot of experience investing because some of them think every investment means stocks.
Right.
They don't even realize that bonds are out there or fixed income. But
Yep.
there are so many tools and instruments, and it's a matter of their level of sophistication and your ability to educate them. We as a firm, just as an example, if we can explain an investment option or idea within 3 minutes or less to a family and have them understand, typically we're staying away from that because
Yeah.
we don't need them to understand everything, but we want them to understand what we're doing and what the intentions and how potentially it's going to help them or enhance what they're doing. So,
Yeah.
there are investment options that are beyond that we look at and we evaluate on a regular basis.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, people got to be comfortable with what their, where their money's going. And to your point, they have to understand it, and you can't be comfortable unless you understand it a little bit.
Right.
But there's definitely more. There's more than one or two arrows in the quiver, right? As far as tools and things to shoot at that goal. And it's not a one size fits all. It really depends on each person's or family's individual circumstances and their risk tolerances and what their why is and where they're going is depending on what tools are going to be utilized. But I think just like you're not going to invest in when you're accumulating, you're not just going to invest in one stock, or one company. You're going to have a diversified portfolio of types of accounts and those kind of things to battle those different detours and curves in the road when it comes to planning. You gotta have that right tool set in mind for sure. Um, well, a lot of people they listen to things like this. They listen to podcasts. They listen to YouTube channels, they read books, and all those kind of things to better educate themselves and be prepared, for their goal setting for retirement or other things that they may be saving up for, or goals that they're setting. Um, Outside of the obvious, what resources and strategies do you recommend people to start with, right, when they're starting to think about this topic? There's so many different things out there. What's the best way in your mind for people to start preparing themselves and readying themselves for a plan and for retirement?
Yeah, I think that, although we live in this information age where basically everything's at your fingertips,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a blessing and a curse at the same
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Because you can go out and get information, you can get opinions, and you could educate yourself, which is great. But there also comes a point where you're oversaturating yourself with information. So and then what typically that causes is some form of paralysis, which causes you not to do anything, which is probably the worst possible thing you can do when trying to plan for long-term goals.
Yeah.
So what I would say is you have to find somebody that you know, like, and trust, and have them be the one voice, the one captain for you and your ship. And you are putting a lot of faith and confidence in this person. I don't underestimate that. But at the same time, you have to have that one voice, because if you think about it, no ship has more than one captain at any given time. And there's a reason for that, because you don't want to go off course and you want to basically stay on the direction and the path you're on. And if you have differing opinions, it might cause hesitation, which might drive you off course. So you have to find that one person that like, and trust, and rely on them. That does not mean that you don't educate yourself and still look into and read about these things. And if there is something that you feel is really viable, or something that might benefit you and your family, then you run it by that one person and say, hey, I saw this. What do you think? And they'll tell you point blank, if it's BS and it's, a TikTok sensation, let's say, that is not a good fit for you and your family. Hopefully they're identifying that and telling you. If it is a good fit, then they might say, hey, you know what? Thank you for bringing that to my attention. It's something that we can certainly talk about and see how we could implement that into your portfolio, and how that's going to ultimately affect the amount of joy and your success with your plan. But I think having that one voice is vitally important, and that's how I would suggest going about it, whether it's somebody that you use currently, whether it's somebody that your family uses or a friend uses, or just somebody who has a great reputation in the community. That's really where I would start, and make sure that you just use them as your guidepost from that point forward.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a team effort, right? I mean, there's always going to be a captain of a team, but it's a team effort, and it's great to have those conversations and bounce things across different people. But having that person that can give you the direction and steer the ship, right? But it takes inputs from all people, and I think the good advisors and are people that are listening, right? And hearing what people are bringing to the table and having those open conversations and giving the advice based off their experience. So great advice. I love that. Well, man, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, folks. All his information is going to be in the show notes. All his links to websites, books, those kind of things are going to be out there. Check it out in the show notes. Man, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future. And to everybody out there, appreciate you listening in. Here's to aligning your future. Until next time, y'all have a wonderful and blessed day.
Thanks for listening to The Priority of Retirement with Shawn Maloney. If you enjoyed the show, check out our reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more free resources to help with your retirement journey, go to retirewisepro.com or check the link in the show notes. You can also download a free copy of Shawn's book, The Priority of Retirement, or reach out to discuss working with him directly at retirewisepro.com. Thanks for listening.
Insurance products offered through the insurance business RetireWise LLC. RetireWise LLC is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by RetireWise LLC are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the insuring carrier. This podcast intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. RetireWise LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by RetireWise LLC. Guests of the Priority of Retirement are not affiliated with, nor do they endorse Shawn Maloney or RetireWise LLC.